at Eamon Holmes and let us know if you've seen Warhorse, what you think about it. And these two strange people who've come in off the street are Vicky Beeching and Ian Lee. And yes, and they brought some newspapers with them as well. Today. So, Ian, we're going to begin with you. And we've been talking today, this story is front page of the Daily Telegraph. GPs told to open all hours. The Prime Minister will make an announcement about this tomorrow. You see, I think this is a superb idea. Mrs Joseph here beside me.
No, I didn't say anything
She likes the touchy-feely approach.
We'll stay out of this, shall we? Let's...
Yes.
I think this is a great idea. The first paragraph. Patients will be able to see their family doctors in the evening and at weekends and email them for advice. Wonderful. It won't fit everybody. It won't fit those people who haven't got Skype, who haven't got emails. But for those people who work normal hours, I kind of work a ridiculous job, like we all do, so I can go and see a doctor in the daytime. It's convenient for me. But people who work normal hours, when you've got appointments between 9 and 6 in the daytime, it's a real inconvenience. At weekdays, it's a real inconvenience to have to take the morning off or the afternoon off to go and see the doctor. You can take a week to get an appointment with the doctor you want. I think it's a ridiculous system. They need to be open longer. They need to be open in the evenings. They need to be open at the weekends so that they're more flexible. And the email thing is great. My little boy, last year, maybe the year before, he had problems with his kidneys and his bladder and all this stuff. And we got the email address of the surgeon, of the consultant. And he was more than happy to... If we had questions, we'd email him, he'd write back and say, don't be worried about this. This is slightly concerning. This is... And it was fantastic. It was just such a comfort. And it stopped us going to the doctors more because we could contact him.
It's not for everyone, though. And elderly people, I think it is part of the GP's job to see some people. Elderly people
The elderly people can still go in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon after cash in the attic for a nice little chat with the doctor, wasting everybody's time. They can still do that if they want. But for people who are working normal hours...
It's difficult. The other thing I think is good about this piece is it says they're going to look at the 10-minute window that we normally get. Because for a lot of people that isn't enough. And if you wait a whole week, often you need to actually talk for more than 10 minutes, especially if it's sensitive. So I'm really glad they're going to reassess that and maybe give people a little bit more time. Because I've often felt quite hurried at the doctors a few times.
I've told a doctor off for that because I sat down and said, I've got about 4 things. And he said, have you only got 10 minutes? And I said, you haven't even heard what I've got to say.
Exactly.
I was in there and I had my boy with me. I said, well, why I'm here, doctor? My boy's got this. You have to book an appointment. I thought that was inappropriate.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that was inappropriate.
It's tricky because people often save the real thing to last, don't they? The kind of they work up to it and then they get kind of thrown out.
But a great idea, but it will need funding and you know, more time. They're going to do more hours, more days, and surely we need more GPs. They've got to, you know, to do all
I can't argue with that. It's not a particularly attractive position being a GP, when doctors can make more money elsewhere.
Yeah, well, you see, exactly. But you know, what really gets me is the Daily Mail approach on this, where they think, you know, anybody, the doctor earns £100,000, they're disgusted when, you know, all their journalists will earn that sort of money as well. And I think doctors should be earning £200,000.
I think was it 7-8 years training or something ridiculous?
Absolutely, I know people who
incredible
do
amount
it,
of investment,
and it's incredible, and we should really value them. But I think you're absolutely right, Ian. More hours, longer days, but pay them for it. Make sure it's a profession that we would all aspire to doing. Vicky, you've chosen from the Daily Telegraph again, Peaches Geldof and her legacy.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So, in the aftermath of the tragedy of her death, her family are deciding what to do with her online presence. And she's a very interesting example of someone who's grown up and spent her entire life in the digital age. She's been very active on networks like Twitter and Instagram, and her family have actually asked for her Instagram account to be closed. So it just raises interesting questions about how we handle digital presence after death, and whether or not some of the online sites where people have posted things become almost like memorials, where you can grieve, where you can post messages of condolence and say how much you miss people, or whether in some ways that actually halts the grieving process and it almost is a bit too much for families and there isn't that sense of closure. So different families handle it in different ways. The Geldofs have decided they want the Instagram account down, but I've seen other families very helped by having, say, Facebook accounts still up, and even years after someone's passed away, on the anniversary of their death, people will still post condolences, and it's quite helpful. So
it's going to be a growing problem. My dad died last year, and every now and then he will pop up on Facebook. Why don't you invite Malcolm Rugby to, you know, to come? And it breaks my heart. And I think it's going to be a growing phenomenon. There are a number of literally dead accounts of people who have died, and Facebook and Twitter won't close those accounts. So what do? You put in your will, this is my password, can you delete my account?
You actually need to these days. It's very much...
So. It makes me very sad when my dad pops up. I find it heartbreaking.
Well, when my father died, my father was a carpet fitter, and for years afterwards, my mum's phone would ring and people say, "Hello, I'd like to speak to Leonard, the carpet fitter. I wonder could he put down my hall stairs and landings. I wonder could he come, I've got a problem." And it's not that it's nice that people remember, but nobody know. I mean, surely it's always been that way. I
suppose it's the same problem, but in a different way. Did your mum find it comforting, or was it upsetting, or? I think
it's poignant, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to re-explain, don't you?
You have to re-explain.
And one interesting thing people are actually playing with at the moment is tweeting actually after you die. You can schedule tweets to happen kind of years in advance, so that sounds a bit creepy to me.
No, I don't think I like that.
Okay. Some people are keen on that.
Guys, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back. I want to talk about these afternoon sessions in cinemas where you get mothers and babies and concessionary tickets and whatever it is, and the type of film you can and should show. I think that's a good one to talk about. And The Highway to Heaven, we're talking about that as well. The bishop who arrives at a church, well, on his Harley. He's a bishop. What do you think of that after this? We're talking about the movies and what you can or cannot see there. We've got Vicky Beeching and Ian Lee. And Ian, you've got there's some afternoons at a cinema where they have concessionary fees or admittance prices, and mums can go along, or dads, with their babies.
It's a great idea. When my kids were babies, we took them to this. It's parent and baby groups. Where you go along and you see a film. And for some parents, it's their only chance they get to go to the cinema. You have the babies there and they're allowed to make a noise and it's kind of accepted. Well, there's a cinema which is the Rex in Berkhamsted in Hertfordshire. They were showing these films to these mums. One of them was rated a 15. And one local resident, complained that it was inappropriate that babies, and these are babies up to the age of 9 months old, were being exposed to 15. And as a result of this, the Rex has said, OK, we'll only show, PG films. So there's a load of mums that want to go and see, not particularly mums and dads, not particularly violent films, but
12 Years a Slave.
Yeah, they want to go and see grown-up films, and they're having to go and watch, Frozen or Disney, the Lego Movie and stuff like that. And it just seems ridiculous to me. It raises the question: at what age does a child become aware of what they're witnessing
and their long-distance vision, and whether they can
see it? I think if they're no older than 9 months, I wouldn't have a problem with my boys at 9 months.
Though, do we?
That is true.
What they're aware of.
What do you think?
You think this is a terrible idea?
Well, I just wouldn't take a baby to the cinema.
I think I'd be worried about the volume,
actually.
They're quite loud, some of those films, aren't they?
They have the sound turned down a little bit.
Oh, do they really? Okay.
Your worst nightmare be going along on, say, like a date to the cinema and it'd all be full of mother and babies, wouldn't that be?
Making a load of noise.
I do really feel for mothers. That is their only chance, because you can't really take a baby to a normal film.
Yeah, no, true.
You become that person who's...
Now, tell me about this bishop on his Harley Davidson.
This is really interesting. So it's a guy called Bishop Richard Jackson, and he's going to become the Bishop of Lewes in East Sussex next month. He's 53, and he often shows up to church riding in full leathers on his Harley Davidson. And he said that he just gets a lot of raised eyebrows as he goes around in his daily life with his dog collar and his leathers. He's confessed that when he turned 50, he had a bit of an amusing kind of midlife crisis, went on eBay and imported this Harley from Florida. But it's a really good example, I think, of the way we can stereotype religious people and the importance of actually saying religious people come from all walks of life. Just because you're riding a Harley doesn't mean you're not likely to be a priest.
I think it's refreshing.
I do too. I think everybody's interested in spirituality. It's not just kind of boring, prudish, kind of geekish people.
The bishop says, I turned 50 and I noticed my hair had thinned and my tummy was rounding out. I dread if that ever happened to me. I just dread all of those things.
Do you have a Harley?
Happening. I'm not even 50.
Not yet.
Even 27 years ago.
He's got a while to go yet.
Just getting up early has done... That's what happened to you on that radio show, getting up early.
Well, I went for a haircut and they put some grey in the front earlier. I don't know why they did that.
It looks good.
Let's go to Charlie Thomas. Charlie, what have you spotted on the back pages?